tutorial is a kind of like a quick abbreviated reminder of the demo that I did in class today, in case it helps. So you have, actually let me just delete this to start from scratch. So inside of your Project 1A Treasure Hunt folder on your computer, you should have 15 images total. I only have 5 here for the demo. And you could create your subfolder called adjustment layers before you begin this, but I'll just do it. Yeah, actually, I'll do a pre-preparation for this. So I'm gonna go to my folder for Project 1A Treasure Hunt and create a new folder. Adjustment layers, adjusted images, I think, right? Yeah, adjusted images. As I say in the assignment instructions, and then you could create that, in the middle of saving it, which I'm going to just talk about in a moment, but you could also just create it before you actually open the images into Photoshop. So you make your selection of the 5 precious treasures that you want to work with for this activity. Here I only have 5 for the demo, so I'm just going to grab all of them and then click and drag them and then drop them on top of the PS icon in my dock, and then they all should open up as separate files inside of Photoshop. And I know that they're separate files because I have separate tabs here in my window. Let me just expand this right here. I have separate tabs at the top of my view inside of Photoshop. And then if you want to see the whole list, you can click on the double-sided arrow here, and you can just see the listed images here as well. Different ways to navigate to go between the images. So for this demo, I'm only going to be working with one, and this is the one really that could use the most work to give it some more snap, some more energy, some more vitality. So I'm not going to be demoing all of the adjustment layers, but I'm going to be demoing a couple here just to give you a sense of the process and to give you a reminder of the end of the process. So here, I know that this could definitely use a contrast boost, so I'm going to click on this contrast adjustment layer, and we'll increase the contrast like so. And the overall brightness maybe slightly brighter. I guess too bright, that's way too bright, right? I don't want to be blowing out highlights or losing details, so maybe about here. Nice, yeah. And then I can do the eyeball on or off right here. I'm going to be saving this as a PSD, so before I go too far, I want to save as, and make sure I'm saving it to my adjusted images folder as a Photoshop format, PSD, great. I don't have to rename it, it's just fine keeping the file name as it was, and then I'll just click on Save. And great, so now that is a PSD saved to my adjusted images folder. And I can continue working on this. If I want to readjust those settings for the brightness contrast, I can double click on this icon, which is the icon for the adjustment. Double click on that, and it brings up this window here. This would be 0 contrast, that's in this case maximum, and just because it was a somewhat flat image, and flat is a term that means it's sort of low contrast. In this case, maxing it out is not too much. It might be too much for other images, but in this case it's pretty good, and I'm pretty happy with that. I don't need to make any changes to those sliders. And now I could explore curves and create an anchor here for my highlights area, and then another one for my shadows, and I could explore just some differences in that. Here I'm looking at just the shadow areas, the darker areas. Maybe they're okay where they are. I have nice deep blacks here where these lines are, and that feels pretty good to me. But it actually does feel kind of good to actually boost my highlights a little bit. One of the things that's interesting about curves is it gives you more control and more nuance compared to the brightness contrast adjustment. I'm not changing this point here or this point here. I'm creating new points sort of like in the 75% range. Not that one, I'm going to just drag that out. The 75% range of the graph, and then the 25% range. This part of the line is shadows, this part is highlights. And just bringing these up a little bit, it does give me a little bit more snap in my highlights, and I'm still not losing detail. There's still some texture, there's still some tonality here. It's not blown out like it was a moment ago when I maxed out the brightness in my other adjustment layer. If I do the eyeball on or off, that gives me even a little bit more, energy, a little bit more contrast, a little bit more clarity. Curves takes a long time to get used to. So if it seems confusing at first, that's totally natural. It just takes some time to experiment with it and have experience, for it to begin to make better sense. But this is a really great starting point. One anchor point for your highlights, one for your shadows. And then just, down is darker, up is brighter, and just a little gentle S curve. This gets rather too dark, right? So I don't really feel like the shadows need to go down too much, but I create an anchor here to hold the shadows where they are. If I deleted it, those shadows actually get a lot brighter, which is not bad, but in this case, I want to hold them where they are, and then, yeah, just a little bit of brightness there for the highlights, or actually a lot more brightness. That's where it was, which is fine, good and all, but then this has, even more kind of like, oomph to it. Okay, great. So that's kind of cool. So eyeball on or off for the curves. Nice, I like that. And then this is the overall brightness, or the basic kind of brightness contrast, and that's working well there. And then lastly, for this video tutorial reminder, I'm going to do a split tone. As I mentioned in class, I just get very excited about split toning. And the way we do that is we go to the color balance. And the color balance is really the one adjustment that allows you to do split toning. And split toning means that you can go to your tone bar here and go to your highlights first. And just a really great starting point for split toning is creating yellow, mainly yellow, and then a little bit of red for the highlight tones in your image. And you can play with just how much red you want in there. I actually don't want too much. Usually it's nice to have like a little bit of subtle red, but more clear yellow warmth. And then I can click on this bar and then go to my shadows and have a contrasting color. So if I have like a cool deep bluish in my shadows, oftentimes that can just be pretty nice. Maybe some magenta, actually maybe not though. Maybe I'm gonna just leave magenta green where it is at 0. And just a little bit of red, a touch of red, but more blue. If you go too far, it can be like, whoa, that's intense. That's not bad. It's a creative, subjective choice. For myself, I often like to have a clear adjustment, but without going too heavily, in one direction or another. Like I mentioned in class, sometimes subtle touches really make a big difference. So here's the eyeball off, and here's the eyeball on. It's a really different image. Even though I didn't appear to actually go too far with these sliders, it actually does have a really big impact on the image. Okay, so love it. That's great. I'm going to go to File. Actually save. I just need to save this because I've already saved it as a PSD. A couple of moments ago, you saw me save it already as a PSD. But I do want to save it to update the PSD file that's there in my destination folder. Now that I've saved the PSD version, I need to save a JPEG version for submission onto Drive. So just change this to just regular JPEG. Again, ignore 2000, ignore stereo, just the regular JPEG here. And then I'm already in my adjusted images subfolder here, and I can just click on Save. And then I just make sure that this slider is all the way to the right. Baseline standard is all cool. Click on OK. And then I can go to my folder, my window here, and just double check. Okay, great. I have a nice PSD version of this image, and then I have the JPEG version. Great. And then I can go into Google Drive just as a final step. And you can stop watching this if you know how to get to the Google Drive folder, and I think that most of you do. But let me just have this as the end of my demo tutorial/reminder. Here we are going digital photography, adjustment layers, and then here is the Drive folder, and then there we go. And then I can just have my Finder window here. And not the PSD. All you need to submit for this activity is the JPEG version. So just click and drag, and voila. And a lot of you have already put a bunch of stuff in here, as we can see. Terribly exciting. Can't wait to check this stuff out. And that's the end of this tutorial reminder. Okay, thank you.